I work at a translation office that handles official documents like work certificates, academic degrees, and medical papers. It's not just any regular translation service. We're actually under direct supervision of the judiciary system, and my boss had to get certified by the court to run this place. Pretty serious stuff since most countries need our translations to be double certified by both the local court and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My boss is one of those rare gems you find in life. Super chill and always trying to help people out. He sometimes even lets poor folks skip the payment, even though he still has to pay taxes on it since everything gets logged in the system. But what happened last week really showed how being too nice can backfire. This guy walks in with a stack of documents he needs translated, work papers, academic records, the whole package. He brings them in two separate batches. By the time he brought in the second batch, we'd already finished translating and getting certification for his first set. His grade transcripts were in the first batch, while his diploma came with the second one. When he first came in about the diploma, he had this weird story about his mother hiding his documents to stop him from leaving the country. I had to explain to him that we couldn't translate copies and needed to see the original document. The guy left and came back a few days later with what he claimed was the original diploma. Something felt off the moment I picked it up. It was weirdly heavy. I kept checking to make sure pages weren't stuck together or something. Then I noticed a postage stamp on the back that looked like a copy, rather than the real deal. I called my boss over since this was starting to smell like a forgery. We checked all the security features, holograms, UV light prints, seals. Most looked okay except for that weird stamp and some odd photocopying marks. I suggested calling the police since the document looked fake, but my boss wanted to be more cautious. He said he was about 90% sure but wanted to be completely certain, so he decided to have someone check with the court first. He sent someone to quietly get the court's opinion without making it official evidence. They confirmed our suspicions. It was probably fake. My boss, still trying to be nice, called the guy and made him an offer. He told him to just bring back the translation we did of his grade transcript, and he'd even refund his money. He just wanted the guy to take his documents and leave. Pretty generous deal, if you ask me. But instead of taking this golden opportunity, the guy decides to be an idiot. The next day we got a call from the court. A court official asked us why we were refusing to process the guy's documents for certification. Turns out this genius went and filed a complaint against us. That's when my boss finally lost his patience. He did exactly what the guy wanted. Sent the forged diploma straight to court. They spotted the forgery immediately, seized it, and opened an investigation. The court then asked us for serial numbers of every single document we'd ever translated for this guy. ID papers, work certificates, everything. They needed to warn embassies about potential forgeries. My boss initially stalled on providing those numbers, but then the guy showed up with his father on Monday. The father tried to intimidate us, warning that we didn't know who we were dealing with. When my boss asked if that was a threat, the guy just told us to take it however we wanted and to just do our job. Well, guess what happened the very next day? Every single serial number was handed over to the court. Now this genius is facing serious jail time, and he's probably been blacklisted from entering any country that matters. All his documents are being investigated, and those embassies aren't going to be happy. He could have walked away with a full refund if he'd just taken my boss's offer. Instead, he tried to threaten us and ended up destroying his own future. My boss might be nice, but he's not stupid. Even funnier, remember those grade transcripts from the first batch? The ones that matched the diploma? Yeah, those were probably fake too. So this guy essentially exposed his own previous fraud by being too stubborn to walk away when he had the chance. I would have just called the police right away. But I have to admit, watching this whole thing unfold was way more entertaining. Sometimes people dig their own graves, and all you have to do is hand them a bigger shovel. In my country, military service is mandatory for all men. Having just graduated high school at 19, I decided to get it done right away instead of postponing it. I didn't just want to do the bare minimum though. I wanted to make the most of my service. That's why I specifically enlisted in the military police division. The training was intense, but I excelled at it, eventually earning the rank of corporal. This incident happened when I was traveling to visit my parents during my promotion leave. I was sitting quietly on the train, proudly wearing my full uniform, including my military police beret, when I felt a sudden tug on my shirt. I saw a young boy, probably around 7 or 8 years old, staring at me with wide eyes. Before I could even react, a woman, who I can only describe as a Karen, walked up to my seat. She immediately demanded that I give my beret to her son. I was taken aback by such a strange request. I politely explained that I couldn't give away my beret as it would be against military dress code even while on leave. Her face immediately turned red. She then started yelling about how it was my duty as a soldier to give up my beret. The other passengers were now staring at us, making me uncomfortable. I tried to remain professional and calm. I apologized again and explained that, as a serving soldier, I had to follow military regulations. She stepped closer, looking triumphant. She then started ranting about how the military runs on her taxes, which apparently meant I had to listen to what she said. Then, to my shock, she actually reached for my beret. I quickly leaned back to avoid her grab. She threatened to call the military police if I didn't give her son my beret right away. I simply told her to go ahead. I wasn't worried. In fact, I was curious to see how this would play out. She pulled out her phone and made the call. About 10 minutes later, a group of military police officers entered our train car. Among them was a very familiar face, my platoon leader. The Karen immediately started accusing us of trying to kidnap her son. I quickly denied her accusation. Then my lieutenant recognized me and casually asked what I was doing there. I immediately stood at attention and saluted, identifying myself as a corporal on promotion leave. I explained the whole situation to my commanding officer, who then turned to Karen with visible disapproval. He tried to explain to her that I was one of their own military police officers and was simply following regulations by not giving away part of my uniform. He told her that her accusations were completely unfounded. Karen's face grew even redder. She continued to insist that I had tried to kidnap her child and called me a monster. Just when I thought the situation couldn't escalate further, she suddenly slapped me across the face. The sharp sound echoed through the train car, and everyone gasped. My lieutenant's expression hardened instantly. He ordered me to arrest her, and I immediately complied. I quickly moved to restrain her, using the proper procedure we'd practiced countless times in training. When I was handcuffing her, she kept screaming about how she paid our salaries through her taxes. I explained that I couldn't disobey my commanding officer and told her she was under arrest for assaulting a soldier and making false accusations. She continued screaming and struggling as we escorted her off the train. The other passengers applauded as she was led away, while her son was taken into temporary custody until his father could pick him up. We later found out that she was sentenced to 1 month in prison for assaulting a military officer and filing a false report. I heard through my lieutenant that she tried to argue in court that her taxes paid our salaries, but the judge wasn't impressed by that defense at all. If she had just politely accepted my explanation about the beret, she would have been free to continue her journey with her son. Instead, her entitlement earned her a criminal record and a month behind bars. I still can't believe someone would risk so much just because their kid wanted my beret. As one of only 5 women among 2,000 firefighters in our department, I'd earned my position as fire investigator the hard way, graduating top of my class. I took pride in my lieutenant's rank and the responsibility that came with being stationed at one of our largest firehouses, complete with 2 engines, a 110-foot tower ladder truck, the chief's car, and our utility truck. The incident that led to one of my most memorable cases started with a call from my friend Bob, who managed the local grocery store. He had a persistent problem with a BMW driver who repeatedly parked in the clearly marked emergency vehicles only space in front of his store. During one of his frequent calls about the situation, Bob expressed his frustration about repeatedly warning the BMW driver about his parking habits. The driver had responded with arrogance, boasting about how his daily earnings exceeded Bob's weekly salary. I decided to investigate personally, driving our department's utility truck, complete with official decals, and a dash-mounted red light to the store. As I pulled into the emergency space, a well-dressed man immediately approached, his face twisted in indignation. He immediately began complaining about my parking, claiming the spot was his special space. I maintained my professional composure and explained that I was there on official business, pointing out the department decals on the door. His response was infuriating. He dismissed my authority entirely, stating that women couldn't be firefighters and demanding that I move my truck and leave. While discussing the situation with Bob in his office, I noticed the upcoming inspection date on the fire suppression system. A plan began to form, one that would require some coordination with my chief, a 6'6" Samoan man who treated his entire department like family. When I told him about the entitled BMW driver's behavior and sexist remarks, his face turned red. He immediately called a station meeting where we laid out our strategy. We'd conduct a fire drill inspection the next time our problem parker showed up. 2 weeks later, Bob's call came in, along with a coincidentally perfect timing of his fire alarm system activating. I rushed into my investigator's uniform and turnout gear, and we deployed with precision. Our engine blocked the BMW from the front, while our ladder truck positioned alongside the driver's side. As the engineer deployed the stabilizing struts, one unfortunately came down right on the BMW's hood. The scene that followed was chaos by design. Water lines were run through the car's broken windows, and our team executed their duties with practiced efficiency. When the BMW's owner emerged from the store in a rage, he found himself face to face with not only fire personnel but also 3 police officers I'd called for support. The owner began shouting threats about making me pay for damaging his precious car, getting in my face before physically shoving me backward. That was his final mistake. The officers and I took him down and cuffed him. His charges included assault and interfering with a fire investigation, resulting in 12 months of probation and $500 fine. His precious baby was towed and later crushed, a fitting end to his entitled parking habits. The aftermath of the incident spread through both the fire department and the local community like wildfire. Our chief made sure to use this as a teaching moment, incorporating it into our department's training sessions about the critical importance of keeping emergency vehicle lanes clear. The story became something of a legend at the station among our newer recruits. Bob later told me that several regular customers who witnessed the event would often retell the story to anyone who would listen, emphasizing the moment when the stabilizing strut came down on the BMW's hood. The grocery store even installed a large, illuminated emergency vehicles only sign, complete with a warning about towing and fines. Surprisingly, after word got around about what happened to the BMW, they never had another problem with illegal parking in that space. As for the entitled parker, I heard that he tried to sue both the fire department and the grocery store for damages. His case was quickly dismissed when the judge reviewed the security footage showing him assault a uniformed fire investigator during an emergency response. The judge apparently had some choice words about his behavior and the importance of emergency vehicle access. And to this day, whenever I drive past that grocery store and see the empty emergency vehicle lane, I can't help but smile, knowing that the best lessons are the ones learned the hard way. Last summer, I bought a house trailer as an investment property. The place needed some work, but I had a plan. Instead of doing the renovations myself, I decided to offer 2 months of free rent to anyone willing to put in the work. The requirements weren't too demanding, just installing carpet in the living room, connecting the hot water heater, and putting in a toilet. A young couple with a newborn baby approached me about the property. They seemed perfect, eager to work and happy about the arrangement. I kept things simple. No lease, month-to-month rental at $450, and I didn't even ask for a security deposit. They completed the work, so as promised, I didn't charge them for the first 2 months. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, then things started going downhill. 5 months passed, and I hadn't received a single rent payment. Look, I understood they were young parents with a newborn, and money might be tight. But here's what got me. The husband somehow found $1,500 for a new engine for his project car, They were constantly ordering takeout and buying new electronics, but when it came to rent, nothing. I later found out through mutual acquaintances that they were bragging about how they were outsmarting their landlord and living rent-free. After the third month of no payments, I started playing hardball. Winter was coming and I deliberately didn't install the furnace as I'd initially promised. I would have padlocked the house if it weren't for their baby. When they got their tax refund, I gave them a chance to catch up. Their response was infuriating. The husband smugly told me they knew their rights and were on a rent strike. I explained to them that's not how rent strikes work and that they needed to do it legally. They just laughed it off and closed the door in my face. For the next few weeks, they started spreading rumors around the neighborhood that I was a slumlord who refused to maintain the property. They conveniently left out the part about not paying rent for months. Some neighbors even started giving me dirty looks until one of them actually asked me about the situation, and I showed them all the unanswered rent requests and documentation. Then COVID hit, and the husband got laid off. I'm not heartless, I gave them a break. But once he went back to work and I asked about the back rent again, he rudely told me to get lost and that they weren't going to pay anything. I later discovered they had used their stimulus checks to buy new gaming consoles and furniture instead of paying any rent. That was it. I'd had enough. I warned them they had 14 days to get out or I'd file a formal eviction, reminding him about his house arrest situation. They spent the next 2 weeks harassing me with late-night phone calls and leaving nasty notes on my car, trying to intimidate me into backing down. I was trying to be civil and keep him from going back to jail, plus help them avoid an eviction on their record. They did move out, but when I checked the property afterward, my blood boiled. They had removed everything they'd installed, everything they got 2 months of free rent for. The carpet, toilet, water heater, all gone. But they didn't just remove things. They deliberately damaged the walls while taking out the installations, broke several windows, and spray-painted obscenities on the walls. That's when I filed for formal eviction. In court, they tried to claim they went on a rent strike because I didn't provide heat. The judge wasn't impressed when he learned they never filed it with the courts or set the rent money aside. Their own social media posts about shopping sprees and vacations during this period didn't help their case either. The husband tried attacking my character in court, so I dropped my bomb. I casually mentioned that he hadn't told me he was going to be on house arrest when he rented the property. The judge, who had looked bored until then, suddenly sat up straight and asked if this was true. The husband had to admit that yes, it was. His parole officer, who was contacted during the proceedings, revealed that he had also failed to report his new address properly. The judge's ruling was beautiful. They had to pay 15 months of back rent at $450 per month plus $2,000 in damages for how they'd torn everything out. The judge also reported the eviction to the husband's parole officer. The wife burst into tears while the husband started yelling about appealing the decision until the bailiff had to escort him out. Just this month, the story got even better. The husband was arrested for violating his house arrest conditions. Then, if you can believe it, his wife had the audacity to ask me to speak on his behalf, claiming they really needed my help. When I refused, she started a social media campaign trying to paint me as a villain who was tearing their family apart. Fortunately, the judge's ruling was public record, and her campaign backfired spectacularly. The final verdict: he is spending his remaining 6 months in jail. They have an eviction on their record, and they owe me a substantial amount of money. I've since learned they've tried this same scheme with 2 other landlords in the area. The wife is now staying with her parents, and I've been contacted by other landlords thanking me for exposing their scam. All of this could have been avoided if they'd just paid their rent or at least handled their rent strike legally. The trailer has since been fully renovated and is now rented to a wonderful elderly couple who not only pay their rent on time but have turned the small yard into a beautiful garden.